There was more to Lost in Space than meets the eye in the 60s. Millions of people eagerly anticipated each new episode. We had our fill of drama, humor, and science fiction magic from the Robinson family, their high-tech robot, and the nefarious Dr. Smith. Cast members shot to fame after the show became a cultural phenomenon. There were off-screen conflicts, colorful scenery, and space-age technology, but there were also humorous blunders that weren't in the script. Some parts were so unexpected that not even die-hard fans are aware they occurred. Come explore Lost in Space with us as we reveal its mysteries, shocks, and bloopers. We traveled into space on the hit television show Lost in Space. The American science fiction television series Lost in Space was developed and produced by the late Irwin Allen. From September 15, 1965 until March 6, 1968, it was shown on CBS. The concert was entertaining for adults and children alike thanks to its blend of dramatic and comedic elements. The novel The Swiss Family Robinson, published in 1812, served as an inspiration, although the plot was given a contemporary spin. This family wasn't stuck on an island, they were lost in space. The Robinson family was one of many space colonists that faced extreme hardships in this series. Over the course of its 3 seasons, the show aired 83 episodes. With the exception of the last episode, which featured a brief color segment, all 29 of the first season's hour-long programs were shot in black and white. The show's space escapades were already vivid before Season 2, when they went full color. October 16, 1997 was the beginning of the story. The U.S. government considered sending humans to other planets as a solution to the problem of global overpopulation. On one of these missions, the Robinson family was selected. Their destination was an Earth-like planet orbiting the star Alpha Centauri, and they were to be transported there on a saucer-shaped spacecraft named the Jupiter 2. Professor John Robinson, played by Guy Williams, was a member of the family. His family, June Lockhart's Maureen, their 3 kids, Will, Penny, and Judy. The United States sent Major Donald West to join them. The Space Corps. During the 5.5 years of travel, they were to be put to sleep and woken only when they arrived at their destination. Unfortunately, not everything worked out. Alpha Control Dr. Zachary Smith attempted to derail the mission while secretly working for another organization. After the spacecraft was launched, he instructed the robot to disable critical systems. But just before launch, Smith became stuck on the ship. The Jupiter 2 went off course due to his excess weight, which resulted in asteroid problems and the early utilization of hyperdrive. Because of this, the crew was completely bereft of any possible way to navigate space. Here was where the actual journey started. The Robinson's voyage in Season 1. The spacecraft touched down on the extraterrestrial world of Preplanus. In order to escape the catastrophe he had wrought, Dr. Smith roused the crew early. Despite making it this far, they were almost stranded on Mars. While Professor Robinson and the family continued to forgive Dr. Smith, he remained on board the ship and frequently caused problems with his selfish and cowardly behavior. On Preplanus, they encountered aliens, bizarre creatures, and had to constantly adapt to survive. At the beginning of Season 2, the crew had repaired the Jupiter 2 and were ready to take off again. Episodes were shot in color this time. They left Preplanus before its destruction by tremendous earthquakes, only to crash land on another enigmatic planet, giving the bizarre new planets a more complete appearance. More adventures and perils awaited them as they were once again trapped. The show had significant alterations in Season 3. The Jupiter 2 began to visit other planets more frequently in subsequent rounds of its space travels. Both intentional and accidental landings occurred. Returning to Earth or reaching their first target at Alpha Centauri remained their primary objective. With the introduction of the space pod, a brand new mode of transportation, the crew was able to effortlessly travel between the ship and surrounding planets. This gave the experiences more diversity and introduced new tales. The show got a modern upgrade for Season 3 with John Williams' new theme music and opening sequence. Lost in Space captivated viewers with its vibrant scenery, fresh planets, and persistent character conflict. The unexpected twists and turns, both in the plot and in the production values, were what truly set it apart. From the shadows, the beginnings, and the sources of inspiration. Although Lost in Space was set in 1997 and portrayed the tale of a family exploring space, its origins were much older. Most people are aware that it shared several similarities with the 18th century book and subsequent Disney film The Swiss Family Robinson. However, the 1962 to 1984 Gold Key comic book series Space Family Robinson served as an inspiration to writer Irwin Allen. Similar to the Robinsons on TV, it followed a family who ventured into space. Even the comic book title was altered to Space Family Robinson, Lost in Space, after the show debuted in 1966 in an effort to attract more readers. Curiously, the original Lost in Space pilot, titled No Place to Hide, established a less lighthearted and more solemn tone. The production cost was a whopping $600,000. That's more than $4.5 million in today's dollars. Dr. Smith and the robot weren't even in this first draft. A meteor shower instead sent the Robinson spacecraft crashing onto a planet inhabited by terrifying Cyclops giants and other perilous weather conditions. Compared to what we watched on TV, it depicted a more thrilling adventure. However, once Lost in Space premiered, the show's tone lightened, incorporating elements of science fiction that were both humorous and enjoyable. Actually, another smash hit, Robbie the Robot from Forbidden Planet, was the inspiration for having a robot. 2 episodes of Lost in Space even had Robbie as a guest star, one of the show's most beloved characters becoming the main robot in no time. It was also contemplated casting Carol O'Connor, who would go on to star as Archie Bunker on All in the Family, as Dr. Smith. In the end, though, Jonathan Harris was cast, and that choice would influence the tone of the entire production. Building the Jupiter 2 spacecraft cost $350,000, more than the famed Starship Enterprise from Star Trek, if we're talking about large costs. Jupiter 2's diminutive size was the reason behind this, and it was all shown to us on TV. Even though there were a lot of hidden compartments on the Enterprise, the wait was worthwhile because Lost in Space was going to be a television first. Rivals, ratings, and a change in tone. During its airing, Lost in Space was up against Star Trek, another science fiction series. For 2 seasons, viewers were torn between the 2 shows. Compared to Star Trek, Lost in Space drew a younger demographic. Star Trek was surprisingly not very popular when it first aired, despite the fact that it went on to become a giant worldwide franchise. When both series were airing, they both had trouble cracking the top 30 on television, but Lost in Space frequently outlasted Star Trek. CBS originally picked Lost in Space before Star Trek, believed that their roster needed no more than one science fiction show. There were also some behind-the-scenes ties between the 2 series. For instance, the Lost in Space makeup crew would borrow molds from the Star Trek artists anytime an alien character had pointed ears, such in the Haunted Lighthouse episode. After the pilot, Lost in Space took a different tone. The program initially featured both serious and comedic elements. The brightly colored, campy Batman TV series, however, became an enormous hit in 1966. Irwin Allen took note of Batman's success and opted to imitate its lighthearted tone in Lost in Space. Wilder adventures, broader humor, and more lavish outfits were introduced in seasons 2 and 3. Jonathan Harris, who performed the role of Dr. Smith, contributed to this transformation. The producers were not happy with Dr. Smith as a more menacing and serious antagonist at first, so they let Harris explore other roles. By incorporating dramatic motions and creating humorous insults for the robot, he elevated Dr. Smith to a more comical and inflated figure. "You bubble-headed booby," like many of these phrases, was improvised. Fans adored the comedic combo that came out of it, and their witty exchanges stood out as a highlight of the program. Regardless of these modifications, Lost in Space still revolved around the Robinson family's voyage, the obstacles they faced, and the peculiar beings they encountered. Beloved moments, guest stars, and a youthful romance. Lost in Space provided viewers with countless memorable moments across its 3 seasons, yet not all of them were staged. In the episode, The Challenge, a young Kurt Russell made an appearance as a famous guest star. As a rite of passage, he portrayed a young warrior kid from a warrior culture who was dispatched on a hunting excursion. Though he would go on to shine in Hollywood films, this was one of Russell's first acting roles. The romantic relationship between 2 of the younger actors is another behind-the-scenes detail that viewers love. Both Bill Mooney, who portrayed Will Robinson, and Angela Cartwright, who played Penny, his sister, were 12 and 14 years old, respectively, when the series premiered. Cartwright was Mooney's first crush, and the 2 eventually started dating. They were in a committed relationship for the first time, and it lasted for 6 years. They went their separate ways after being engaged for a brief period. The show's history was further enhanced by these human links. Despite never topping the TV ratings, Lost in Space had a profound effect on popular culture. Thanks to the show's light touch with science fiction, the Robinsons may encounter space pirates one week, talking vegetables the next, and Old West prospectors without sacrificing the show's family-friendly vibe. People kept going back for more because of the excitement and enjoyment. Unique among its contemporaries, the show stood out for its use of spectacular effects, vibrant scenery, and eccentric characters. The catchphrases of the robots, the dramatic antics of Dr. Smith, and the thrill of watching the Jupiter to take off on another mysterious mission are all things that fans remember, even after all these time has passed. Lost in Space was more than your average television show because of instances like this. For many spectators, it became a priceless memento of simpler times, from fun competitions to enduring stardom in science fiction. While Bill Mooney, who played a younger Will Robinson, was on a show that was in competition with Star Trek, he was a lifelong fan of the latter. During the time that both series were airing, he really resided in close proximity to William Shatner. A 1998 episode of Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, marked Mooney's official entrance into the Star Trek canon, after what seemed like an eternity. He had connections before that. He contributed to 3 Star Trek comic novels published by DC Comics in 1990. The Mummy sci-fi adventure was far from over. Many Babylon 5 viewers will remember him from his role as Linear, which he portrayed for the whole 1990s run of the show. His sci-fi career extended well beyond Lost in Space. Viewers of The Twilight Zone may remember him from 1961's It's a Good Life as the terrifying boy with godlike powers. More than 2 decades later, he made a triumphant return for the 1983 film adaptation of the same episode. Another well-known figure from the science fiction community made an appearance as Mummy was establishing his legend. There was a connection between Lost in Space's robot and Robbie the Robot from the 1956 film Forbidden Planet. Robur Kinoshita, who lived to be 100 years old, was responsible for their design. Fans of both series enjoyed Robbie's appearances in the Lost in Space crossover, which took place in 1967 with Condemned of Space and 1966 with War of the Robots. While the show did a great job of developing interesting characters, not everyone was satisfied with the outcome. Before he played Zorro, Guy Williams was a household name. Now he plays John Robinson. Assuming he would play the lead role in a serious drama, he decided to join Lost in Space. However, his position diminished as the play became increasingly campy. After the program finished, he was disappointed and never acted again. He retired at the young age of 44. He emigrated to Argentina, a country where Zorro's fame was still immense, where he remained till passing away in 1989. Mistakes and chances that went bye-bye. John Williams, who was credited as Johnny Williams at the time, was a composer whose work contributed to the show's iconic score. In the 3rd season, when the show's tone became even more lighthearted, he composed a larger, more lively version of the theme that had previously been utilized in the first 2 seasons. Though he only composed music for 4 episodes, Williams' themes became instantly recognizable. The pilot that never aired made interesting use of Bernard Herrmann's score from the 1951 film The Day the Earth Stood Still, as did 9 later episodes. Later on, fans were treated to a 12-CD compilation of the show's music by La La Land Records. While some behind-the-scenes tales were motivating, others were not. Creator Irwin Allen was reportedly a pain to collaborate with, according to multiple cast members. Despite his numerous film and television successes, he had a reputation for being demanding and sometimes hostile on set. Later on, when Bill Mooney attempted to script a reunion episode, Allen entirely stopped it. The script for Mummy had the backing of 20th Century Fox and CBS, but Allen still wouldn't read it, concerned that Mummy may attempt to stake a claim to the program. This meant that the get-together could never take place. On one 1984 edition of Family Feud, the group competed against the Hawaiian Eye Ensemble, marking the only time they all appeared together. The sequel to Lost in Space, which was released in 2017, also bombed at the box office. A lot of people thought the 1998 film version was overly serious and cold compared to the original series. However, it was notable for 2 things. It ended Titanic's 15-week reign as the top film in the US. In addition, it was nominated for the Golden Raspberry for Worst Remake or Sequel. The film briefly made headlines, but now it's mostly forgotten. However, not every story shared after a program ends is one of letdown, recognition, enduring impact, and unrealized potential. In 2013, the Exceptional Public Achievement Award for inspiring the public on space exploration was bestowed upon June Lockhart, who played Maureen Robinson, by NASA. She was the first actress to win the award and only the 3rd celebrity overall to do so. According to Lockhart, it was the greatest honor of my life. The unaired pilot featured Maureen with a doctorate in biochemistry, which is an interesting twist. The airing version, however, portrayed her more as a nurturing maternal figure. Her contributions to the show's problem-solving sequences could have been more substantial if the writers had maintained her scientific abilities in the plot. However, it is evident that her impact persisted even after the series concluded. Thanks in large part to the show's campy comedy, the Lost in Space moniker remained popular even after its original cast members moved on to other projects or even other nations. remarkable individuals, and unexpected links to many realms of science fiction. We might have witnessed the Robinson family reunited in a fresh adventure if Irwin Allen had been more receptive to Bill Mooney's proposal of a reunion. However, viewers are well aware that the show's and its creators' legacies continue to spread well beyond the final destination of Jupiter 2. And to grasp the full extent of that heritage, one must return to its inception. Simply said, the original Lost in Space shown on television was very different from the modern portrayal. In the beginning, there was a different vibe. See, back in 1965, when Lost in Space originally aired, it wasn't nearly as vibrant and extravagant as it is now. Reprising his role as Will Robinson, Bill Mooney recalled the film as a profound drama. He stated that the original idea for our Lost in Space was a dramatic pioneer tale pitting a family against an alien landscape. Filmed in black and white, the first season had a grungy, even eerie appearance. The cinematography, according to Mooney, was so superb that it might compete with the elegant 1930s Frankenstein features. John Williams's breathtaking score for the play only served to heighten the tension and drama. This more sinister strategy was successful initially. Even before CBS stepped in, the show was pulling in 40 million people for its first 6 episodes. That the show was too scary for Family Hour was what they told creator Irwin Allen. They preferred a less heavy option. The course of the show was entirely altered by that sudden shift in tone. The opportunity presented itself for Jonathan Harris, who played the cunning Dr. Smith, to bring additional humor and silliness to the role. In no time at all, the somber drama transformed into a bright and colorful space adventure. Even if some viewers preferred the show's darker tone, the majority of viewers recall Lost in Space with this new design. However, throughout its 3 seasons, the show had 2 distinct characters. In the background, relationships and recollections. Penny Robinson's on-screen counterpart, Angela Cartwright, and Mooney had the most idyllic childhoods imaginable while filming Lost in Space. They talk about it with such happy, nostalgic voices. According to what they claimed, we enter the hidden areas. Bruce Lee of Green Hornet and the rest of the Peyton Place group would be our hangout buddies. These were no ordinary trips to the television set. These were times when you felt like you were a part of something truly remarkable, and you laughed and laughed a lot. Half memoir, half behind-the-scenes look, Lost and Found in Space 2 is jam-packed with exclusive photographs and anecdotes. The years following the show's conclusion are also briefly mentioned. According to Cartwright, the actors maintained a tight proximity. There was no disintegration of our dysfunctional Robinson family unit. Our dinners and get-togethers persisted. They continued reminiscing about their time on site, even after Jonathan Harris passed away. Some things are still cherished close to heart. The Lost in Space film from 1998 is one example. Jared Harris portrays an adult Will Robinson in one scene. Given his fame in the science fiction industry at the time, fans have long pondered why Mummy passed on that part, due to his performance in Babylon 5. According to Mommy, the book has all the truth. For the time being, all he can say is that it was fated to not happen. Excuse me, but even that small hint of mystery is enough to pique the interest of enthusiasts. The past and the future. According to Mooney and Cartwright, the original show's darker aspects have been revitalized in the Lost in Space series on Netflix. They were pleasantly surprised by how the new version paid homage to the original. According to Cartwright, they've shown an incredible level of devotion to the old series. They were both cast in parts in the Netflix drama. Mooney played the original Dr. Smith in the first season before Parker Posey betrayed him. Cartwright had a riveting flashback role in Season 2 as Posey's on-screen mother, Sheila Harris. It has been a delight to meet their younger co-stars, Mina Sundwall, Penny, and Maxwell Jenkins, Will. Warmly praising the young actors, they appear pleased to be passing the baton to the next generation. Cartwright is being coy about whether or not they will make an appearance in Season 3. The only thing I can say is that we are eagerly anticipating Season 3, she teased. Their high expectations for the next series, along with their nostalgia for the first, demonstrate that Lost in Space is much more than a television series. It is a common past, one that goes back many years, binds together many generations, and holds many mysteries. Speaking of which, Lost in Space, like any other popular TV show, had its share of small mistakes. The most peculiar blunders that slipped your mind. The control unit belonging to Sesmer is being stolen by Dawn and Dr. Smith in one scene. Rad-Ion, the villain, is meant to be invisible, but if you look closely at the base of the electrical arch, you may make out his golden feet protruding. At the same time, a human shoots the Robinson robot, causing it to sustain a severe frontal wound. However, the next time we see the robot turning around, the hole is no longer there. In another incident between Will and Dr. Smith, a similar gaffe occurs. Despite its purported presence, the robot's power pack is conspicuously absent. In an amusing instance of props vanishing, the robot returns the Energizer to his beloved, but instead of normally rolling off the screen, he abruptly disappears as he approaches the right side of the camera. The effects, rather than the props, were the source of several of the problems. In order to make it appear as though the robot is powering down rather than functioning, his lights briefly go off while he disables a force field. As Omega-17, IDAC, and the robot engage in combat, it becomes apparent that the robot's plastic collar is constantly losing pieces. The lower shutter of the robot actually falls off later on, following Verta and the Alpha IDAC's disappearance. When anything doesn't add up, it stands out like a flashlight in a dark room to those who pay attention. Part of what made Lost in Space so entertaining were the continuity errors. Two people are plainly seen in one outside view of the Jupiter 2 landing, standing at the control panel, as seen through the front glass. After the landing, the camera pans inward, but instead of standing, John Robinson and Don West are firmly fastened to their chairs. Even the ship undergoes unexpected transformations. It is a ship with one level when it is in flight. Suddenly, there are 2 levels on the ground. The number of levels increases to 3 in just one episode. For a spacecraft in the middle of nowhere, that's quite a renovation. The performers also occasionally struggled with their outfits. While Dr. Smith is rehearsing for a performance, his cloak gets caught in the door as he closes it. It appears to be motionless in the subsequent shot. Objects used as props also had enchanted moments. John and Don have a hard time lifting the supposedly heavy panels while constructing a shelter. Even when standing erect, the panels remain pliable, suggesting they were likely constructed from lightweight materials such as styrofoam and aluminum foil. As John became ensnared in the electrical anomaly, the radio experienced its own continuity issue. Don and Judy begin to save him just as the radio is shown exploding, but it remains intact. The antenna is raised in a single shot. Another one has lost its antenna. The radio is completely absent in yet another. Also, as the dogs charge the trader's camp, you can make out the head of a crew member, probably a dog trainer, peeking out from behind some boxes in a scene when Will and Dr. Smith arrive. Even though they were minor, fans had plenty of material for laughter because of these kinds of slip-ups. Not every blunder has to do with clothes or props. Actors were the subject of a few snaps that shatter the mirage. A member of the family is put in a tube so that they can be reproduced in an episode. Even though everyone is meant to remain motionless, Dr. Smith blinks conspicuously. The radio also appears and disappears in different shots during the same electrical anomaly that John experienced, demonstrating how difficult it is to maintain perfect alignment between takes. When the dogs charge at the trader's camp, that crew member's head pops up again. Not even the past could escape mistakes. It is 3:15 a.m., according to the announcer on an MTG radio show, the 17th of October, 1947. However, that date really occurred on a Friday rather than a Saturday. In another scene, Will peers out the window of the prison vessel on which they have crashed. It is said that the inmates are paralyzed with fear. Still another inmate fiddles with the staff he's gripping. Additionally, scientific errors surfaced. The Robinsons allegedly going faster than light due to contaminants in chemical rocket fuel is one major one. Chemical rocket fuel is unable to achieve speeds near those of light in the actual world. No rocket propulsion system can achieve a speed greater than the speed of light, according to Einstein's theory of special relativity. However, the scientific reality that would render this scenario impossible is completely absent from Lost in Space. Gaps in the story and lapses in character development. Problems with props and effects were not the only ones. The story was impacted by them. A plot hole involves extraterrestrials duplicating the Jupiter 2 crew. However, the peculiar aspect is here. Neither Penny nor Judy had ever been observed by the extraterrestrials. The question then becomes how they could make exact replicas of them. The aliens were similarly unaware of Smith and Will's hiding spot. Thus, it's quite unlikely that they possessed the necessary data to reproduce them. The extent to which the aliens could have knowledge is cast into doubt by this. The Jupiter 2's storage facilities for its rover and other vehicles remain a mystery. Even though there doesn't appear to be enough room in the ship's design, all that equipment magically arises when it's needed. Not even well-known quotations were error-free. Taking a cue from the robot's fearlessness, Dr. Smith once cited the charge of the Light Brigade, but he misquoted the number of horses used by the Valley of Death, saying 500 instead of 600. Dr. Smith and the robot ought to have been aware that this is among the most renowned lines in poetry. No matter how meticulously produced a presentation is, elements can still slip between the cracks, as these slips demonstrate. That said, for fans, it adds to the nostalgia of viewing Lost in Space over and again. Had a blast. Something fresh might pop into your head with each viewing. Because of this, the evolution of Lost in Space is as bit as exciting as the events depicted on TV. Which Lost in Space adaptation is your favorite? The first season's darker episodes, or the subsequent one's brighter ones? Who from the original cast would you most want to see return for an additional adventure? Feel free to provide your opinions in the space provided. For more amazing tales from the intriguing past of Hollywood, make sure to subscribe, like, and stay tuned. Till we meet again.